Walk with me, walk with me, walk with me. Let's walk the talk.
We face crisis in our lives in one way or another, be it economical, psychological, or any other type of crisis. But sometimes you're not in a position to understand how to manage and cope with crisis. And this can cause a lot of issues, be it mental or even physical. And today in our Walk With Me show, I'm not alone because I'm with a guest and we are discussing, or rather we are walking the journey towards understanding and knowing how to cope with crisis. And I want to welcome our visitor. She's a trainer, a mother, and also a teacher of these things. And with me is Mrs.Lukundo.
Thank you, Rachel, for
How are
having
you,
me.
Millicent?
I'm well,
Yes.
Rachel. How have you been?
I've been good. I've been okay.
Yeah.
Despite the challenges. We are still coping with these issues. Yes,
Good to hear.
Sure.
And that you've been coping with them.
definitely.
Because some things that are inevitable, they just happen, and we find ourselves in the midst of those kind of things. So what do? If we can't change them, we move along
And
with
we
them.
cope with
And
them.
we cope with them.
Yes.
Yes,
You're so
Rachel.
much welcome.
Thank you so much.
Today, Millicent, is a journey because I've come to understand the kind of a situation we are in, even in our country and the whole world at large. We are in crisis.
Yes.
And maybe our viewers may not be understanding what is a crisis. Or rather, when we talk about being in crisis, what exactly do we mean? And this is why I've decided today we walk this journey,
Okay.
at least understanding how to cope and managing the crisis. Maybe to start with, what do we mean when we talk about crisis?
Or what is a crisis?
Yes.
A crisis, we can say it's a time of intense difficulty. Intense difficulty or danger. Yeah, intense difficulty. Like, for example, what we are experiencing now at the moment with this COVID-19, there are a lot of difficulties. You know, with one thing, you know, with the COVID itself, it has brought others. And so there is a lot of multiple channels or rather multiple issues that are coming along with COVID. For example, at the moment now, people are they're not leading their normal lives like they used to do. Waking up in the morning, for children going to school, for other adults going to their daily hustles, they're not able to go. So it's a time of difficulty. And because maybe, for example, for some of us who wake up in the morning and they are living on their daily wage, it can cause a lot of trouble. Because maybe they don't have savings that can take them along like for 6 months. So what happens to this kind of people? It's posing a lot of difficulty and causing people to have so many psychological problems at the same time.
Talk of psychological problem and combined with an intense difficult.
Oh yes.
Why do we term it as can bring psychological problems? At the same time being an intense difficult. In other words, when we talk of psychological part of it, does it mean it's one type of a crisis?
It's not one type of a crisis. This crisis itself, we are saying it's an intense difficulty or intense danger. For example, with the COVID-19, let's just, because it's something
Because
that
this is what is happening
at
right
the
now.
moment. Yes, it is in the know. Itself, it's a health issue.
Yes.
But can you see how it is also affecting people financially? Can you see how it is affecting people socially? Initially, we could hug, we could kiss. Now you can't go hugging, you can't go greeting everybody with the restrictions that the government has put in place. And even for for an individual to take care of themselves, it's causing a lot of difficulty. So you can imagine, we used to hug, we used to kiss, we used to greet each other, and we are not greeting each other. Take, for example, you go to the rural area, but at the moment people have been stopped, going to the rural area, and you meet those, people in the village, and you're not greeting them, for example, shaking their hands. Somebody will wonder, and they're like, why is this person not shaking my hand? Some of them don't have the information that we have right now. So it can cause a lot of psychological problems. People asking themselves, what is going to happen next? Because people will tend to get into a mode of worry. Okay, people get to into a mode of anger, affecting. I'm not able to provide whatever I'm supposed to be providing, for example, for my children. And so anything that happens, people become so irritable. Those are some of the psychological problems that a crisis come along with.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are the types of crisis?
Types of crisis, there are several of them. It can be financial crisis. For example, like right now, you go to the market, in the market, the people's finances, they're in crisis. You can imagine somebody was, at their place of work, and they are told now, you're not going to get your 100%. We're going to give you 25%.
There's that pay cut.
So you can imagine the pay cut. It's going to cause a lot of financial problem. And that one, it will run into other things. If you're going to take my 75%,
Sure.
and you're leaving me with 25%, will this, my 25%, meet my financial obligations? Will I be able to provide food for my children? Will I be able to pay the house rent, the medical cover? So you can see, like, financial crisis, what would happen? Causing, bringing a ripple of other effects of other crises. Because it's a crisis, right? That's financial crisis. Come to, socializing, relationship.
Social crisis.
Social crisis.
Yeah.
They will not understand. Children were being provided with, all those other things. Right now, people have cut on their expenses.
That freedom is no more.
That freedom is no more. And the child will be like, Mom, what's not happening? Some of them don't understand you're in a crisis. So bringing also social, relationship crisis. We are also there. People don't know how even they are going to relate with one another. So a lot of things is happening. Look, we are talking about relationship. When you talk about relationship, this can be between children and the parents. All right. It can also be between spouses. It can also be between siblings. So bringing in a lot of issues that are happening. And maybe, how are people responding to crisis?
Now, before we come to the response, now when you talk of the relationship, being part of the relationship is going to be affected, especially in this particular pandemic season we are in. In most cases, people tend to think crisis is when there is a certain war, like post-election violence, such kind of misunderstanding between parties and such kind of a stuff. But you find some people do not understand. Even in the family, we have crisis. Like when there is no that relationship or there is no good communication, there is no one who is understanding each other. And as particular this time we are in, it seems now crisis is at its peak. Because I understand if it can because it can be to this level where now parents are not in a position to understand each other between parents and kids. And it's quite unfortunate. Even the marital, whatever violence, there are so many.
Yes.
Can we handle now a bit of the crisis in our families? Because most of our viewers might not be understanding that even misunderstanding each other, it can be a crisis.
Yeah. Remember, we said that crisis is a time of intense. There is that intensity. For example, yesterday one of my my friend just called and she was telling me, kuja uzime moto hapa. And I'm wondering, moto gani ninazima? And she tells me, a father has told the daughter, I don't need you here, get out. And she's wondering, where is this girl going to go? What is going to happen to her? Of course, there are so many other underlying issues, because these are some of the things that are brought in a counseling session. And with those kind of scenarios, they can cause a lot of crisis. Emotional crisis, psychological crisis. What is, even physical, where do I go? For that young adult at the moment, we can say she's in a crisis. Because number one, she feels my parents don't seem to understand me. All right? I am jobless. At this time of COVID, with the quarantine, where do I go? What is going to happen to me? So this is somebody we can say is in a crisis at the moment. And she's wondering, what is going to be my next step? All right? Because maybe maybe she would have reasoned and told herself, if I had a job, maybe I would just go and rent a room somewhere and stay. But right now, I'm jobless. Okay? Quarantine. So, and again, who is going to accept me in their homes?
Nobody.
You understand?
You're a stranger to everybody.
You become a stranger to everybody. And again, remember, even if you'll be accommodated somewhere, there is no, that place where you are feeling, I am home, this is my place. It's no longer that. That feeling is not there. So crises are there. And that's why sometimes, even like now, there are people who didn't know how to live with their spouses. People are making fun and sending messages outside there. We used to meet just each other in the evening. Like one child was asking the father, corona imekukimbiza nyumba, the child couldn't understand how the father just came home early, that nowadays dad is at home. And for that person, he's a stranger to them. Yes, they can see the person there. True. But at the same time, how do I live with this person? I've been used to being alone, spending most of my time alone. And then this person comes, and some of them want to be treated like the kings, and they have never been there. So a lot of crisis. How do I manage them? How do I even cope with them? How will I even be able to relate with these people? So causing a lot of that, intense difficulty at the home. And sometimes the people asking, when is this thing going to end? So that we can go back to our normal lives.
And not because they want it to end, it is that because they want to get out of the crisis.
Exactly. I want to run away from this. Yeah. This is not my environment. This is not my atmosphere. It's too much for me. How do I handle all that is happening to me? Another example we were just sharing with somebody, and this person said, when they came back to the country, and for him, he was now going for the quarantine. And he decided, the government is giving people those options that you can either do the self-quarantine. And he told the wife, prepare the house, and he was given one certain room. So can you imagine now the father is talking to the children from the balcony. They can't come near each other. And so the children are wondering, Dad has come back home, but he can't even come near us. What is all this that is happening? Yes, those are crises.
These are also crises.
They are also crises, yes.
When we talk of now the crisis, especially in the family, are we in a position to cope with it?
Oh, yes. We are in a position to cope with it.
How do we cope with it?
Before maybe we cope with it, let's see how do people respond to this crisis. Yeah. Some people, they can lose joy. There's the loss of joy. I don't know what to do. So I am so stressed. Some people can become so irritable. And one thing, it's just like a nerve that you just touch that wire and it blows. So people become irritable. Number one, because what am I supposed to do? Or maybe I'm supposed to do something,
but I'm not able
to do it. Or I'm supposed to do it. Remember, my atmosphere, my cool, or my life has been disrupted. So some people can become so irritable, all right?
Yeah.
And some people can, some people they become so emotional. Anything, irritability is that emotional, some people call them short-wired. Anger is another way that people are also responding to some of these crises. A lot of anger, a lot of underlying anger. And, with anger, it becomes a ripple of effects. Others are responding with what? With fear and avoidance. There's a lot of fear outside there. A lot of fear outside there. Even when you go out, when you go back home, you are like, I really want first to remove these clothes and put them somewhere else. I don't want them to contaminate, with whatever that is my house. And some of us are a lot of avoidance. How many people have been in the house with this crisis that we are having at the moment? People are avoiding a lot of things. So we will avoid, people avoid. There is a lot of avoidance. Others is a lot of withdrawal. In a crisis, there are some people who can really withdraw. So at home, there's crisis. So maybe I don't want to blow up. So what do? I withdraw. And that's where people now become, even their communication is affected. And they'll be talking nil by mouth. It is a yes, no. Yes, no, it's just withdraw because I'm trying. I don't want to get into a crisis. I don't want to get into a moment that I'm going to regret. So what do? Let me withdraw. So there are people who that withdraw. Yeah, there's a lot of irritability. Yeah, a lot of irritability. There's loss of joy. There's loss of hope. People become hopelessness. Those are some of the ways that people have been responding to crisis.
Wow. Are we able to cope with crisis? Do we understand sometimes, even in our families, we have crisis? As we come back, we will still continue with coping with crisis. Keeping it, walk with me.
Walk